So,
Great. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Nice to see you all. We were just speaking, Esme, Felicia, and Barbara right before you got on. I don't know if you've heard, but we have some sad news to share that Karen's father passed away earlier this week. Hence, she's not joining us tonight, but obviously, difficult news at a difficult time, and I'm going to see if I can find. I think we have it somewhere. Her address, her physical address, and
yeah, that would be nice
to send a note or a card. I'll just send it.
That would be really good. I would appreciate if you did that.
Yeah. So yes. Again, I appreciate everybody's time being here and recognize all the parts of our lives that go on and nobody sees them or knows them, or they're part of how we show up to this work. So, but it's great to see you all otherwise, and delighted, Esme, you're joining us for your first subcommittee meeting. This is the Outreach and Communications Subcommittee, and so we'll dive right in with tonight's agenda. It's not a real extensive one, so I don't think it will have to go on for super long, but there is at least one absolutely critical piece of business that we have to do, just like we did in the general meeting, which is to approve our meeting calendar for next year. So that was in the email that Margaret sent. Thanks for that, Margaret. So we'll get to that at the end. But otherwise, just quickly, we should approve the minutes from last time if you've gotten to take a look at those. Obviously, just Jane and Barbara, since Esme, you weren't on last time, and Felicia, if you see anything on there that needs changing.
They look fine to me.
Looks fine to me too.
All right. Well, we'll consider those approved then.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And go right into the 4 pieces of old business that we have. The first one is the annual report posting International Human Rights Day. Obviously, we worked to get the report finished in time. Thank you all, one and all, for your contributions to that. It was submitted to the town manager on the 9th. And so was in time for International Human Rights Day on the 10th. It's going to go to the council. We decided to hold off on sending it to them. Technically, we could have gotten it to them ahead of their meeting on Monday, this past Monday, but we wouldn't have been able to get on the agenda as an item and speak to it directly. So we decided to hold and submit it for their first meeting or maybe second meeting in January. We can the council can dedicate some time to reviewing and reflecting on it, and we can speak to that.
Glenn, whenever you get that on the agenda, will you tell everybody so we can show up, or anyway I want to show up?
Yes, definitely. I
Thank
think
you.
that one, I know traditionally I've gone, or Jane, I know you went on Monday, and others have gone in the past to speak to particular items. But since this is the representation of all our work, I think it'd be good if we were all there. So
Yeah, I agree.
definitely let folks know. But otherwise, the other thing we were going to do was try and get it up on the website and make it available. Margaret, I don't know if you have any updates on that, whether that was authorized and done, but.
yeah, my apologies. I should have texted you when I did that on Friday, but yes, it is up on our page, on the Human Rights Commission page. There is a link to be able to download the full report, and then I put it up on Facebook, acknowledging International Human Rights Day, putting a link to the annual report, and also putting a link to, I think, what is International Human Rights Day. So that all did happen on Friday.
Awesome. Great. Well,
I'm
thank you.
increasingly impressed with how fast you town employees work. it's like running around on a hot stove, the stuff that you do and how quickly you do it. So thank you for doing that.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you for recognizing that. Yeah, some days are crazier than others, but that we did manage to get that done
That's
and
great.
get that up. So, so it's there, and it is not a news item on the homepage. I just didn't really feel it warranted that, but it did get recognition, on Friday.
Great. Terrific. Well, thank you again, Margaret, both before, during, and after getting that all done. And yes, we'll continue. The next phase will be to engage the town council with it, and I will keep you posted when that gets added to the agenda. Any other questions on that item? Okay. Great. So and it kind of bleeds into the next one, which is the survey results outreach. I think that was the plan, to use the report in additional outreach opportunities. So would invite ideas, thoughts here. If we're going to do it with the council after the new year, do we want to do another activity with it in some context? Jane, I know you've got your community conversations coming up, so we'll kind of have a full events calendar for the winter months. So maybe we don't want to try and add something to that and hold off, but we want to highlight that that's been an idea that's been out there for the duration.
Oh, go ahead, Barbara.
I'm just going to raise something that we might not want to deal with, but is there any plan to do another survey? Because the one that we did was not really, it only had a few people. What do we have? Fewer than 300 people responded. So I don't know if should even bring that up. Maybe we don't want to talk about that.
Whether we want to or not, it is a good thing to bring up, because it's part of thinking about our planning for next year and our overall activities, and I would think that certainly is something we want to consider. And whether it's I don't know that we want to commit to an annual survey, because that's maybe a lot, but that should definitely not be our only survey, and it should definitely not be the only opportunity we have to gather information about human rights conditions in town. So
okay,
and in that line, and jumping on Barbara's favorite thing to talk about, and this is also connected to the speaker series, I would really like us to figure out how to have an open conversation with people and invite them. And I mean, there are security ways. I know Karen is very concerned. She doesn't want us to get Zoom bombed. But I mean, there are things in that survey that need attention. And we also, I think, need maybe a little more input from the more diverse elements of our community. So I would like us, if we're going to work on anything, to try to figure out technologically how we can have an open, come tell us what you think kind of meeting, and advertise it in places where people might not normally notice it. When I realize, if you don't have a master's degree, you can barely get a job in stores. So that's an issue that people ought to be able to talk about. We continue to have some of the harassment issues in the middle school. We're going to have Afghan refugees living around here, and people need to at least have a chance to say what they think about that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. And we never did focus groups. So I think maybe we need to do something, but I don't want to put us in the position that Karen was so concerned about, which is to get Zoom bombed by nasty people. So that's more of a tech problem than anything else. Margaret, what do you think?
Well, going back to sort of the agenda item itself. So we did include the top line of the survey results in the report.
Correct.
And I know that will be probably part of what Glenn or the commission, touches on when we make our presentation to the town council, right? Like here, there are a few key things that we learned. And granted, it wasn't 3,000 people, it was 300 people, but here were a few directional things that we think might need some attention. And we can also kind of extricate the report, the survey results part of the report and do a special press release of it. So it's not, embedded in the whole report, but here are some key things. And so I think that we talked about going out to the E.O. Smith Board of Ed. We talked about maybe even, making a presentation about our results to maybe not the Board of Education, but maybe Kelly's administrative team, right? They meet every week or every couple of weeks to just bring the attention to that, what about this and what are we doing there? So I feel like we can make a little bit of movement with the results that we did have with a couple of key places, do some press about it, and then that sets the stage for let's talk about this more. And whether even we use the Conversations on Racism organization, right, that has some momentum to bring some of these human rights issues there. So I feel like there's ways other than just us as a commission saying, come on in, but maybe we can do a few other things with some of those results if we feel that the results really tell us something that is, that we can do something with.
Like that. And the Conversation on Racism group, which I also belong to, was kind of floundering around. They arose in a crisis. The crisis calmed down and the focus has become very diffuse. And yet there's a bunch of really good people there with really good ideas and a lot of resources. And I think even talking to that group, I can think of 6 people that are like the core of the core. That if we had a joint meeting with them, it might be very, very useful. And so I think that's probably a very good idea. And I'd love to see us do that. And they can invite their friends because our meetings are basically wide open. Anybody can come. So if they have other friends.
I think that's a good idea. We should be careful because racism is a narrow part of human rights. But I think that's a great idea to talk to them and see what kind of ideas they might have, because I think we're looking for ideas right now. We're looking for a direction to go in. That's where the focus groups and the surveys and all these things would come in, would be meaningful so that we have a good direction so that we know what needs to be done. I think we're still floundering a little bit.
Yeah, I think CORE is a very nice acronym, but the focus has gotten much more broad.
Okay.
And that's in a sense too bad because it messes up the name, but it should just be difficult conversations group or something like that. But anyway, that's what we have right now. And I think we can make it broader. And the people in that group are connected to everybody. Everybody has lots of connections with everybody else. I don't know if you've seen Carlita Cotton. She's been all over the newspapers lately because she just got an award for being a military honor roll for retired military. And she's very active in this group. And Mia's very active in this group. And Sarah Koffel, who knows everybody who can sing. And, and Shannon Zion, who is the head of the PTO for the middle school. So they all have, and sometimes Kelly comes to that meeting as well. So we could invite her, and I think that might be a really good place to start because they are connected.
I'd agree with that.
And we know that the school district has done a tremendous amount of work on this issue, right? And trying to connect teachers with families and support families. And I think that they are doing a lot of work that we should connect to also, right? And sort of so that we understand what their programs and goals are, so that, because I think that the survey unveils a few things, but you're right. What are the action steps that come out of it, which is what we really could conclude and then choose to focus on a few things.
Yeah, I think that's a real good group. The more I think about it, the better I like it because they're so connected. And this is really about spreading information all over the community. It's a network, and they've got a huge network.
So, so it sounds like we'd like to open up that conversation. And Jane, it sounds like maybe you're the person placed to
Yeah.
initiate that. But then in order to facilitate it, maybe we do need to take and rework a little bit of the survey results report
Mhm.
to make it usable in that context, and rather just than as a part of our overall annual report.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you want to take a look at that and let us know what you think would be the most helpful? Do you want to share it with CORE first and get their ideas, and then we can rework it? How do you want to approach that?
I'm going to reread it, and then I'll probably talk to Mia because she's the convener, and we'll
Okay.
kind of come up with something together.
And I
Okay.
think we,
Nothing is going to happen between now and the beginning of next year, so we have a little time to just converse.
but I think it's looking at it and what are 3 conclusions that we can come to from this survey, where we want to dig deeper or do more work or think, or areas of focus, because we can't take it all on. And
Okay,
maybe
that's
that
good.
becomes the conversation starter on the CORE meeting.
Okay,
These are a few tidbits that we came up with our small sample size, but based on that, where should we be where should we focus our attention collectively?
yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. Okay, so I'll reread it, then I'll get in touch with Mia. And at the moment, I really think everybody is stretched out in a million different directions. So I'm kind of not thinking anything's going to happen till the beginning of the new year.
I think that's
fine.
right. Yeah, no, I think that's right. Okay. Anything else on this item then?
I did share, I just want to let you know, I did specifically share the report with Kelly Lyman, because I do think,
Good, good,
there's a few
good.
things in there implying, that stuff is going on at the middle school. And I did not want her to be blindsided by that. And I thought that she should read the report and be aware of it. And so I'll try to follow up with her on that and let her know, that what we're thinking about with the maybe including CORE, because she's, fond of that of that. She's participated a lot with it. So
Yeah. Boy, is she going to be a loss when she leaves.
Yeah.
She is so good. And I'm assuming somebody else will be good, but she's got such history here that she's really helpful.
Okay. Yes. So good. So it sounds like we've got some next steps on that. The next item is Jane, your speaker series. So
Yeah, my speaker series has absolutely fallen off a cliff. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know much about how to get guidance. We managed to get a grant proposal in to pay the first speaker right under the wire. But I contacted them and said, can you tell me when you're going to make a decision? And they basically said no. So that wasn't helpful. So I've been in touch with the first speaker, her manager, and we're talking about alternatives. But it seems to me, again, this will cost some money and we do need to find some money. And she gave me a lot of ways to go looking for money, but I'm not doing that between now and the end of the year either. So I'm thinking that we're putting this on the back burner for at least a couple of months. I'm not giving up on it, but I can't personally do any more with this until I have a better sense of how grants work, alternate grants. I've got several very willing people who are going to help, but if I don't have money, it doesn't make any sense to go ahead until I'm sure I can pay at least the main speaker and then the other people. And I'm meeting with Katie Bell and Amy Nocton on Monday to talk about how they proceed. And Amy has been very helpful with learning the ropes of how all this money business works. And she commiserated with my ineptitude, which I appreciated very much. So I think we're going to kind of go back to square one and try to get it right this time. And then we'll probably be moving further into the spring. But once we get it going, the thing is going to be very easy to run. as long as we know the target audience and have good publicity, and we can kind of do an incidental every so often presentation about who lives in Mansfield, Voices of Mansfield, and see where it goes. So I'm not worried about it, but I got to get the grant thing and the money thing organized. We've got the technology, but we don't have any money right now. So we are deferring for the moment.
Okay. What do you have an ask for us? How can we be helpful?
Well, Margaret helped me a little bit. Is it kosher to go to another funding agency when you've already got a proposal into one? Could I
Yes,
go? Yes, it is.
I think so. I think go for,
I need to find somebody else who's a little more forthcoming and open-minded about talking to their requesters. And then I need to talk to Ryan also to find out the details of how the town government works with money from people like us. So, but if it's okay, then I'm just going to proceed to look for maybe some other source of funding. And I'm going to talk to Barbara because she knows about this stuff.
well, I don't know a lot about it.
Well, you know more than I do, trust me. And we will proceed on a as we can basis as volunteers. So what do I need from you right now? Not a whole lot. Esme, I really want to pull you into this so that you have something interesting to do. And this is going to be interesting, but it's at the moment, it's just kind of be calmed. If you ever sail, you know what that means. There is no wind going on right now. So I think I'm just going to pick it up and make a big noise at the beginning of January.
Jane, oh, I'm sorry, Esme, go ahead.
Out of curiosity, Jane, could you give me like an overview of what the speaker series is intending?
What it's about is that, and I got this from Jim Mercurio, who is the minister of the Methodist Church on Route 195. And he said this town is full of all kinds of very diverse population groups and none of them know each other. They don't talk to each other. Everybody stays in their own little thing. So, and I got some of the idea from something they did in Suffield. So the speaker series is to get groups of people who have something in common, and within the group, a diverse population. Like the first group is going to be faith communities of Mansfield. What kinds of religions are practiced here, and what's it like to be one of whatever you are here? And to try to particularly include Muslims as well as Christians and Jews. And then if there's another group, we'll pull it in. The second one is going to be about raising children and being a family in Mansfield. And I want that to be people maybe from Pakistan, maybe some African-American people and some white people. So we're trying to get the complexity of the community in a conversation about a topic they all have in common. So it's faith communities, raising a family, living with disabilities. And we have a man named Hollis Cotton, who is an attorney, and he's got cerebral palsy, he's got mobility problems, and he helped write the ADA regarding public transportation for people with disabilities. And he's agreed to chair whatever that conversation is, but I need to round up a few more people with other kinds of disabilities. And then the fourth one is being a farmer in Mansfield. And the farming people are really excited about that. And Jessica Stearns just thinks that's the most wonderful idea. So those are the four topics. And originally I was going to do ethnic by ethnic by ethnic. And then everybody said that's wrong and it's oppressive and you're stupid because you're white. And so they said, why don't you mix up the groups around a topic that they all have in common? And that's where we are right now. And I think it'll be a much more interesting conversation that way. And then we're just going to make it public and give people a chance to write questions in the chat. We'll moderate the questions so nobody gets a chance to blow up in anybody's face. And that's what it's about. And the one that the speaker that's going to cost the most money is a woman named Debbie Irving, who wrote a book called Growing Up White, which is a brilliant book. And she's an outstanding presenter and she's a community organizer. And if she comes and talks to us, she wants to get out there and make people talk to each other about race as a general issue. And she suggested we do a book club, and Leslie Donahoe, who is the librarian, is wonderful at that. So she's on my list of people to talk to about. Maybe we'll get a book club with Debbie's book as the subject. So that it's all going on, but it's just too much for me to handle at the moment.
I got it. Thank you. I know this isn't really a speaker thing, but it's the same kind of idea. We do a thing in deliberation discourse called Narrative 4. I don't know if you've heard
Yeah,
of
and
that.
I went to one of those once.
Yeah, that might be a good idea for communities in this town, especially if you're trying to kind of build that sense of community.
Yeah.
And for people who don't have or don't necessarily interact a lot, that's a great way to get to know people in my personal experience.
Well,
So,
I'm meeting with Amy on Monday, and if you want to come to the meeting, you're welcome. Just get a hold of her and find out what time it is. It's a Zoom meeting, because I agree with you. I think that would be wonderful. I'm not sure that's the first thing we should do, but I think it's a wonderful thing to do. And I really enjoyed the experience that I had with it. It was very effective.
I'm glad.
My problem is I have too many ideas and not enough now do this to follow up with.
Yes, well, we're
Do
going to
you-
try and keep you focused on the
Thank you.
on the speaker series because it's excellent.
And
Yeah.
do you have a sense of what your total budget is that you need to pull off 4 of
Yeah.
these, Jane?
I'm thinking in the neighborhood of $5,000, and it's probably more like 4, because we have access to free use of technology. So we need you to do the PR and I need to write the publicity. Debbie cost $2,000, and I was going to ask the other coordinator, the facilitators, to do it for free. And at which point, not Amy, Katie told me that I was being oppressive because it's not fair to ask people who are already carrying a burden to carry more of a burden to inform the other people and not get paid for it. So I'm thinking I'm going to pay all those facilitators $500 a piece. So I mean, between $3,500 and $4,000. And the people I've invited can't accept the money, so they're going to have to take it and donate it. But the gesture is what matters. And that's what I would say. I think the reality is around $4,000 for what we've gotten so far. If we continue, we may need a little more sometime.
Okay, and it sounds like, so the one grant application is in and you're just pending hearing back on it, but you're thinking you might try to identify other sources of support.
I think that's the responsible thing to do. Debbie's assistant also offered to give us as many of her books as we wanted at $10 a piece, no postage, that we could sell at a markup and keep the money to help support the effort. But we'd have to sell thousands to raise enough money. It would just not do it, although I'm willing to do it for maybe some other reasons. She had a lot of ideas about fundraising, but this is a brand new area to me. I don't know anything about it, so I have to learn how to go ahead with it.
Yeah, I think a couple of these grant options might be good, and I can put some thought in as well in terms
Yeah, I appreciate
of
that.
what might also work. I would definitely not at this point get into the resale business in order to try and raise.
Keeping track of money is very complicated and I don't want to do it.
Right.
Tried
but yeah, there might be other sources. So, and then you also mentioned publicity. So regardless of the eventual timing of each one of these, it's probably worth starting that now just to kind of get some not to push it out, but the design work. So if you want any help with that, or if you've got some writing to do or pieces, we can start kicking that around and make sure we're ready to go as soon as all the other pieces fall into place.
Yeah, I'm going to meet with Katie and Amy on Monday, and they are just full of how to do it. And after that, I expect that I will start writing. I don't have any trouble writing, and I'm going to use Margaret's support for the publicity part of it. So yeah, we're going to get going on it. The tentative date for the Debbie Irving presentation was January 17th or 19th, but I'm not optimistic that we can do that. She is a fantastic speaker, and I want to have her, but I don't think we can get everything together in time.
So we're just talking $4,000. The town doesn't have a slush fund or any sort of money that could be used for that, does it?
Not that I'm aware of, and slush funds are probably not,
Special project fund.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what you
I'm
call
gonna
it.
make an appointment with Ryan, and I'm gonna try to get the machinery of how this all works in my head, and then we'll know more about where to go.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good idea. If you want me to go with you to that
Great,
meeting,
great.
just let me know. If it's not, just don't do it in February.
Because you're not gonna be here, you're gonna be
I'll
out.
be, I'm hoping to be on a cruise ship in February. We'll see what happens.
Yep, no, it'll be in January. Okay, I'll be in touch.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions, Esme, on? Okay. All right, Jane. Well, keep us posted and let us know what you need.
I will.
So the next one is a general, more open one, which we started to talk about a little bit with respect to the survey, but future outreach opportunities. So I think we've got kind of a near and middle term plan that's going to carry us into the at least the later spring of next year. But we also want to identify those other key outreach opportunities that we know of or would like to develop. Typically, we've participated in, again, Pride Month, Juneteenth, and Indigenous Peoples Day as outreach opportunities. We now have the mural that we can use as part of that. There may be other calendar dates that we think we'd like to leverage, but it's a question of both what do we think our goals should be for the coming year, and what is our capacity in terms of pursuing some of these activities.
I still like the idea of the focus groups talking. And even if we can't do something like that, what if we put a box at the community center saying something like the Human Rights Commission of Mansfield would like to hear from you, and have a little thing where they could just put a piece of paper in there? I mean, is there a way that we can reach out to the community and find out what issues we may not know about? I don't know. Just simple ways to do that.
Yeah, what do folks think? I mean, I think, you could definitely reach out to Jay and find out if that's something they would host at the community center, or we could also look for other places that might do it. And then the focus group, again, we've talked about it for a long time. I don't see why we couldn't make that happen if that's a priority for us, particularly if we're going to do it on Zoom. It's pretty straightforward.
I'm not real worried about the Zoom bombing. If that does happen, you can just shut it down, right?
Yeah, well, and a focus group is different from what I thought we were talking about before, which is to just kind of invite people to come, right, and like generally open to the public. A focus group is pretty structured, right? You actually you intentionally select individuals to join, and then you ask them specific questions and facilitate their conversation on it in order to get, some again, perspective that you're not going to get in a survey. So, I mean, which are the ones you're thinking you'd want to do? Both? Yes, and or something different?
I mean, somebody could be Zoom bombing this meeting. What is the difference between opening up? This meeting is open to the public. Is that true? Or do they have to say ahead of time that they would be coming?
Well, they have to have the code to get in.
Right. So they would have to communicate to Monica, I would like to be invited in, or here's some public comment I want to have submitted. So, it's because this isn't a public Zoom link. I think that for me, it's what would make what would compel someone to really feel that showing up at a discussion, right? Like it seems that if there are human rights violations going on, what's going to make them sort of trust us to bring their story or their situation or their observation? I think, Glenn's right in that if you invite people personally, and real focus groups pay people, right? Like, you're going to give me your opinion for an hour, we're going to pay you $40 or whatever the going rate is. But, to invite people that we think we could really get some valuable input from, and have and conduct kind of an idea generation piece, is probably it takes more work, but it might be more successful in filling the table, as opposed to just promoting, we want to hear what you have to say, and expecting people to, leave their dinner table and join our Zoom on a Tuesday night. So, it's that, what is that, or what is it that we're offering them so that they in turn will share their ideas with us? That's the hook that I feel like we would need to do that. I do want you all to know, based on our conversation last month, that I did put out on Facebook a day or two ago that we were having our outreach meeting, and anybody who wanted to come and share anything about human rights observations, or, to please, and I can't remember, I guess I probably put in an email or something, but so I did promote the fact that this meeting is happening and that we want people to come. So we did a little bit of something for this one, but.
Thank you.
That might be a good thing to do every meeting.
Right, to just put a tickler to kind of put it out on.
All right.
But I suspect that Margaret's right, that's unlikely to yield a high volume in any event. We might get one or two people to come occasionally, but if what we're looking for is very intentionally to engage voices we haven't heard, we've got to go to them and structure it in a way that, makes it attractive, and that can be incentivized either by paying them, as Margaret suggests, or by, essentially fulfilling their goals and objectives and not ours, right? By centering something that they're trying to get done, and being a part of that. So again, I think these are all doable, but they, we'll want to be thoughtful about the design and proceed, in a deliberate fashion toward it. It's just a question of what's the goal, and then, who's the lead in making it happen.
My impression, or what I think I would like to see, if we invite people and try to get a sense of human rights circumstances in Mansfield, is who are the people who, because we know from our survey or other events, feel like they're not getting a fair treatment. And so we would be looking for people who are members of those groups. They would be people with disabilities. Hollis Cotton would be happy to come talk to us, and we would be knowledgeable because of him. So people with disabilities, maybe a couple of people from Pakistan or Japan, and we can find those people, who have been vocal about difficulties, and we can find those people in the middle school. Not optimistic about the high school. We don't get a lot of support from the principal there, but maybe Amy can get some support, and Amy knows a lot of people. So I would just say, who do we need to hear from to advance the cause of human rights, and particularly because they're not represented on the commission? And then just pick out a couple of people from a number of different categories. And what's the optimal number, Glenn? 10?
For a focus group?
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 or 12 is great.
Yeah. You don't want to go much beyond a dozen.
Yes, I think that we could find a dozen people by asking people who know people. Who do you recommend for this conversation? And do you know they have something they want to say about this? And Amy is the first one that comes to mind because she knows so many high school kids, and it might be their parents. But I'm sure there are other people as well.
I know a year ago, when the schools were closed and the school district wasn't able to invite families into the schools for parent-teacher nights or open houses, and they wanted to make sure that families who needed services and resources and support were still aware that they could get them and how they could get them and what was available, what were the food services, what were mental health support, the youth services, activities that were still going on for kids, even though, the school was closed to those kinds of things. And they actually organized and went out to the Helenko Estates, for example, and we're out there for a couple of hours doing a resource fair, kind of made an event of it and publicized it. They did another one over on Mount Hope Road, where there are several apartment buildings. I mean, that's part of it, I think, is where do we think these people live and work, and where are their kids in school, and can we reach them through those means, people who we think might not be part of, if you will, the mainstream of what's happening here. But I do think you're right. I think the schools could be a good resource for us, because anyone who's got kids, right, they're in our family. And so that we may be able to identify 8 or 10 or 12 families and maybe try to recruit some people to come and have an honest conversation about this.
And I think Kathy Easley is another good resource. She's a very good
yes.
And I think some of the churches and other faith communities would also be really good resources to potentially partner with. I think, the schools have a lot, right, on their plates, and yes,
Yep.
they're connected in ways that make them, good potential conduits to connecting, but like they're grappling with and continue to grapple with a lot. And so, I worry a little bit about the bandwidth if, we're trying to move in there, but churches are, a little less kind of overall cover, but also have, I think, a little more capacity to support us if we were trying to connect with some of these communities, and maybe a good place to start. I'm just mindful. We go through the schools a lot.
I have an idea that's very low tech, and just put like a suggestion box, like I said, at the community center. Have something like a pile of forms next to it, and people can either anonymously or not put their concerns into the box, and we can just drive around. It could be at the community center, it could be at the religious institutions, it could be at the schools, it could be at the library, the town hall. I mean, what do you guys think of something like that? That's just very low tech.
You could put a thing on the bottom. Would you be willing to participate in a focus group to talk
Well,
about?
if they're willing to give their name, and would they be willing to come and talk to us? But even if they're not, if they have a concern, they might feel safe in that kind of situation, writing it down and putting it anonymously in the box. And that would at least give us some kind of idea if there's things out there that we need to know about.
Yeah, I think, again, like you say, it's low tech and not necessarily super complicated. I would, I'd not honestly have high hopes that we'd get a lot out of it. Frankly, I'd be concerned.
We wouldn't lose anything.
A lot of, potentially, people putting things in there that are not serious or harassing in some ways, just to mess with it. But yeah, I think it's, I don't object to trying it. I think the real key is to have conversations with with people and to, you know, build trust and rapport. And that's when people start to share with you the things that are really of concern, and help you understand what their experiences are, in ways that go deeper than a survey might. And I would think, again, working with trusted partners, and not being real aggressive with our agenda and needs, but like offering to partner and think about and help people with their agendas and needs. And then in the scope of that, that's how we'll get to know this town in a more in a deeper way. So I don't know that it has to be one or the other. And so I think we should try a bunch of strategies. And Barbara, I'm hearing that, yeah, this is, we should try a box. And, you know, if you want to design that and put that together, and then we can connect with Jay, start at the community center, and then, you know, maybe go to the library and move it around town for a month or two, and then let's see what we get. And, you know, maybe
I'll look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost a little bit of a combining a did you know, you know, and we come up with some factoids either out of our survey or just some demographic or, you know, anecdotal things. You know, did you know that not all of the buses that run are handicap accessible? I don't know if they are or not, but I'm making that up as an example. If you are concerned about other human rights like this, you know, human rights challenges like this, call this number. I mean, maybe we can set up a phone line that just, you know, leave your message anonymously, where it goes into a phone line, you know, so someone could call and we could pick it up that way. You know, there may be, so you could kind of do a campaign that combines anonymous boxes, little posters around town with a phone number. And it's kind of a combination of, did you know this? And tell us your stories. You know, what else should we know about, kind of thing. I mean, maybe there's a real low, like you say, kind of a low tech, but it's a way to invite input in a safe kind of a way. I mean, that's another way to take it.
Mm-hmm.
So Barbara, you going to put this little thing together?
I will,
Okay, thank you.
but I'm gonna show it to everybody.
Yeah, you are.
Send it
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
One other future outreach opportunity, I suspect that Katie shared with you maybe last week at the meeting that she has received, your youth services has received a grant around doing a Pride celebration in June. So we do have a town committee that looks at events in general and tries to plan events out in the future. And so we'll certainly be looking at this Pride funding that she's gotten to try to do something more with our, I also had a conversation today with a teacher, and she was sharing that she has a child who is transgender, and that she is in a lot of family groups with transgender children. And people were asking her, you know, I'm looking for a community where we can go live, where my child is welcome and where our lifestyle is welcome. And can you know, where would you suggest? And so she's been recommending Mansfield left and right as a great place to come live, because she feels that. And so she said, you know, is there anything you can do on the website, like on the town? Like, is there some way that we can position ourselves? You know, it kind of reminds me of the open and affirming campaign that the first congregational, you know, that the congregational churches were doing a few years ago, right? So it got me to start thinking. And so that's another something that I think is worthy of consideration. And how do we communicate that? That we're a community that does get it and wants to welcome families here who are struggling with these kinds of identity, you know, challenges where they might be living. And So that's another thing that I don't quite know what to do with it, but I'd
Mhm.
like us to think about in the future.
If you get a critical mass, all kinds of things start happening. And if somebody's already telling everybody this is a good place to live, then how do we capitalize on this and help, put out an invitation for people to let us know they're here and what do you need, and see where it goes.
Yeah, the town has submitted a couple times to the human rights campaigns, essentially scorecard on this, and so we could look to that as a as something to do a better job trumpeting as our as we if we're receiving high marks on that end. I don't know that they do any sort of badging officially, like you're designated an official welcoming and affirming community. But either way, even noting that, the other thing obviously we just did for the Afghan refugees was to get the town council to adopt a proclamation, and so maybe there's something that could be done as part of the extended Pride Month celebration that had an action by the town council to be explicit in their commitment to being a welcoming community for gender nonconforming, transgender, and other identities that could go some way in that regard.
Okay, I belong to the Human Rights Organization and I get all their material. I think I'm just and they always call me and say, give us more money, give us more money. So I will call them up and say, give me some ideas. What are you guys doing? What do you know about where are the resources? And I'll just do that and see what I can find out.
Yeah, and obviously a big part of this has to do again with the schools and what their policies and practices are. So if there are ways, and I know at least for Mansfield Public Schools, they have pretty robust policies around this, so those could be amplified as well.
Good.
All right. Well, let's add that to our kind of ongoing conversations. And I'm wondering then, Margaret, as the working group gets up and running with respect to Pride Month, if we want to have a designated member of our committee join at least some of those, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, again, Katie will be involved primarily. It's a youth services grant. So Katie, I'm sure will can keep us apprised, and then we can decide if it makes sense, right, to have an additional HRC volunteer join in on that planning.
Okay.
So we'll get our first meeting under our belt, and then we can maybe talk more sensibly about it next time.
And more generally with that events planning group you've got, if there's like a calendar or something that ever comes out of that gives us a little visibility on what's already happening. Again, my feeling is we should be supporting and amplifying as much that's happening already rather than creating new things that can be competing or stretch, right? So, if there's ways in which we can orient around what's already happening, and then I think that's good practice on our part. So we just need to know that stuff's in the pipeline.
So much of this is communication, and I think we're beginning to see the communication lines, but we really have to work on that.
Yes, true in just about all contexts, and an ongoing challenge that's never resolved, but one that I think we're getting better at as the commission figures out our role. Okay, anything else under this agenda item of future opportunities we want to flag now? Esme, any questions, thoughts, ideas, reflections for those people?
I mean, I like Barbara's idea a lot. I also think, I know this is a bit more tech centered, but if we have a link on our page to a survey where people can just kind of note something, anything they feel, that's also another way.
Yeah.
Put it on the poster, scan a QR code kind of thing. But yeah.
That's a good idea. Yeah, a virtual idea box essentially, right? So. All right. Well, we're done with our old agenda items, and the only new business then is the meeting calendar for 2022, which Margaret sent along. Thank you. It continues to be the third Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m. So you can see them there, the 19th, the 16th, or the 16th, the 20th, etc. How are we feeling about this as the time? Is it going to work for everybody?
Are we still doing 6 o'clock, or are we going to go to 7?
We could go to 7 if everybody feels that's more convenient.
How do other people feel about that?
I would love 7.
Me too.
7's okay with me.
Karen was expressing that she would prefer it be a little later
Yeah.
also in our last meeting, I think.
So if there's no objection to shifting it to 7,
Let's do it.
let's do that. Okay, so we'll keep the same dates, but shift back an hour to 7, and that's.
Do you want to do a motion on that and kind of an official?
Oh yeah,
vote?
yeah, because this has to be official. So somebody want to move that we move we
I'll do it. I brought it up. I move that we move it to 7 o'clock.
Okay, a second.
Second.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so adopted unanimously. So yeah, so good. So we'll shift to 7 p.m. Third Wednesday of the month. So it's consistent with the full commission meetings. And as always, if there are reasons to shift things, we can do that with a special notice. But this will be our standing meeting. All right. Well, I think then, since there is no public comment, we are at the end, unless anybody else has anything that we missed that we need to bring out. All right. Well, an hour on the nose, it looks like. So well done, everybody. Again, thank you for all your hard work this year. And here's to, let's just say a different 2022. I've given up hope on things necessarily improving, but at least maybe we'll get some variety in this thing. So, but until then, I'm going to send a note to the whole commission with respect to Karen's father, so they know, and also add that the address as soon as I get it. So. People can send their condolences, and if we receive any other information, right, with respect to a survey or anything else that's public to share, we'll do that as well. So,
and a quick question, Felicia, and I don't mean to assume that you're taking notes. Did you take minutes tonight, or can you do minutes tonight?
I'm going to. I'm exhausted, so. I got a few things down, but I'll look at the recording and finish them soon.
All right. I mean, I appreciate that. If you possibly could, that would be great.
Of course,
Okay. Thank you.
and Felicia, let
You
me
can
know
do-
if you have any questions or I can be helpful as well. So, yeah, I know it's yeah, we're limping toward the finish line of this year, but onward. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.